Okay, what is up, everybody? It is Monday, February the 12th, 2018, and I'm running a little bit late today because Periscope is acting really funny right now. The Periscope on my Twitter, Periscope is not actually showing my stream. It's like I don't know if it's timing out or what exactly it's up to right now. But we are going to push forward anyway. It's saying this broadcast is not available. I don't know. I've never seen that before, and I haven't been using Periscope as long as some other people. So if you have experience with Periscope and you've had this problem before, just let me know what the issue is, and I'm gonna have to figure it out independently on my own. My stream seems to be playing fine on Periscope itself, so. I don't know. It's a weird situation, but I have my YouTube stream up as well, so you can follow along on YouTube. And once it gets posted on Periscope, you'll be able to listen to it on Periscope. And today, on Friday, I focused a lot on some tragic stories, the two tragic stories in particular of activists in the past and present who died fighting for what they believe in. Today I wanted to be I wanted to take a little bit more of a lighter approach. So today I will be my Black History, the profile I want to touch on today for Black History Month is going to be Angela Davis, a woman who I really respect. And, her story is incredibly important, not just because of the things that she advocates for, but because she went toe-to-toe with the system, this whole white supremacist apparatus, and she came out on top. And you don't hear stories like that too often. Black History Month isn't just about people from 70, 80 years ago. It's also about people from more recent times who are still with us, who we can still learn a lot from. And so so I'm going to be talking about Angela Davis today, and then also, hold on, I'm reloading my see Periscope is still effing up on Twitter. I don't know what this thing is. Let me see if I can share it directly. Let me see if that'll work. Give me 1 second, fam. I'm sharing this on my Twitter page. Okay, let me reload this. Because usually as soon as I go live, it goes live on my Twitter page. So, okay, sorry. All right, so here it is. I don't know what the embed is doing. All right, so give me 1 second. I'm correcting some things. I'm gonna go ahead and delete this and go ahead and repost that. All right, perfect. All right, so. The story, before I get to Angela Davis, the story I want to touch on first is the death of Nkosinathi Nkomo. And I might be mispronouncing this. Y'all know how I am with names. But Nkosinathi Nkomo, a South African inventor who created a water purification device that could have gone a long way in helping the water crisis there in South Africa. but he was mysteriously murdered. Well, before I get to that, because I'm going to touch on his death, but I want to lead up to that first. So I want to first talk about the South African water crisis. Something that I don't really think is getting a lot of attention. As I was doing research about the South African water crisis, it reminded me so much about Flint, Flint, Michigan. Not necessarily because of lead. So they don't have a lead problem, as far as I'm aware. Their issue isn't lead related and contamination related like in Flint, but it's still a water crisis because of a drought. So much in the same case with Flint, Michigan, and how our brothers and sisters in Flint, and not just in Flint but around the country, how they can't get access to water. Our brothers and sisters in South Africa are going through a similar dilemma. But the cause is very different. So let me break it down for you. For those of you who don't know, Cape Town, a city roughly the size of Los Angeles, will run out of water, and local authorities will cut off taps to most homes and businesses, leaving nearly 4 million residents within the city without access to water. So this is a very bad situation for the people there in that city and that whole region. They call the day when this is set to happen Day Zero. And residents will have to go to roughly 200 water collection points around the city to receive rationed water. So they're going to have to start lining up. You're going to have these huge lines. 4 million people. Can y'all imagine 4 million people trying to get access to water at the same time? Do you know how much of a nightmare scenario that is? Now, some services like hospitals, clinics, schools, and of course government buildings, the government officials are not going to go without water. They're going to make sure they have their water before everybody else. Trust me. But they will be exempt from the cutoff. But everyone else will be living in a very tough time, and they're saying that citizens in Cape Town will be limited to 6.5 gallons of water per day. Now, people probably go through, especially in America, people probably go through 6.5 gallons, in an afternoon. You probably go through 6.5 gallons when you're taking your shower. Probably even more than that. So now how did things get this bad? I've read reports that suggest that Cape Town since the year 2000 has been ahead of the curve when it comes to water conservation. But things changed in 2015 when a major 3-year drought hit the region hard. It was unlike anything they'd experienced in a very long time. I heard it was in about a century. In about 100 years, they haven't had a drought this bad. So herein lies the problem. Cape Town gets more than 99% of its water supply from dams that rely on rainwater. So obviously, if in a perfect scenario when things are going as planned, people are using the rainwater from the dam, in their houses and in their businesses, etc., etc. And the dams are being resupplied with the water that's being used because of the rain. So like I said, this is a perfect scenario if things are going as planned. If the rain continues to fall. But what happens when the rain stops falling and there's a 3-year drought? Well, it's unlike anything they'd experienced in a very long time, like I said. And this is unlike a lot of other places where the water supply is fueled by a variety of sources. So you have desalination sources where they have methods of using salt water and taking the salt out of, because obviously we can't drink salt water, taking the salt out of the salt water and creating fresh water out of it. Some countries do that. Some countries have underground aquifers and things like that. But 99% of their water capacity Like I said, 99% of the water supply, not the water capacity, the water supply going into Cape Town comes from rainwater. Okay, so the drought exposed a key flaw in their system. And because of local corruption and infighting within the country, it seems, it doesn't seem like the local authorities properly prepared their citizens for what was going to happen. What they knew was going to happen. And so now the people of South Africa, specifically the Western, what's it called? The Western, I'm looking for the name specifically. I don't want to give the wrong name. I want to say the Western Province. Yeah. So the Western Cape, not the Western Province, the Western Cape. So all of the people in that area, okay, are going to suffer because of the inaction of local authorities. And this is a very bad situation, but see, this is the beginning of a problem. Because of climate change, this is only going to get worse. And it's South Africa today. What countries will it be tomorrow? But we have Republicans in the United States that want to pretend that climate change isn't an issue. They want to continue to double down on what's made climate change such a bad issue to begin with. And I'm not saying droughts haven't happened before climate change. Droughts have been going on since, arguably, honestly, since the beginning of time. But climate change is going to make this problem worse. And if politicians don't prepare their citizens, whether they are in the United States or in South Africa, everyone is going to suffer because of it. So, while Cape Town's dams were full a few years ago, so only a few years ago, up to 2015, their dams were completely full. They now stand at 25% capacity. Day zero is supposed to kick in when Cape Town's dam capacity reaches 13.5%, which is projected to happen sometime between mid-April and May 2011. Okay, so now let's go to the young man who was 24 years old when he was murdered, and I'm saying that specifically for a reason. Let's go to his death in Nkosinathi Nkomo. Okay, so now that I've laid the groundwork, let's talk about the up-and-coming South African civil engineer and his very strange death. He died at the very young age, like I said, of 24, after he went public. He went public about a water purification system he invented aimed at helping the drought crisis. This brother had his own company called Aqua Renew, which was actually making, according to reports, was actually making him enough money for him to be able to pay for his college tuition fees, on top of being able to use that platform to advertise his device. Well, after gaining national attention in October, I want to say it was October of 2016, after gaining national recognition, okay, by December, he was dead, allegedly falling from a multi-story building in Cape Town. So listen, this man was murdered. He was 24 years old. He had his own business. He had a very noble cause and a very noble goal that he was working towards. There would be no reason for him to commit suicide. So they're trying to say that this man just went to some building in Cape Town and jumped off the roof. This brother was murdered. Now this man's death really became a big story and started trending on Twitter when Helen Zille, I might be mispronouncing her last name, but Helen Zille, I'm not sure, but the Western Cape Premier, basically, which sounds like a type of governor, what we would in the United States call a governor, congratulated a man by the name of Retief Krigi, a white industrial engineer in South Africa, for an invention that functions eerily similar to the same invention Nkosinathi Nkomo went public with over a year prior. So South Africans became infuriated and took to social media saying that Nkomo's invention was stolen, which is honestly definitely not outside the realm of possibility. There is still a tremendous amount of racism in South Africa. I looked through the list of premiers of the Western Cape, which is the region Cape Town is located in, and I'm surprised that none of them have been black. Even post Nelson Mandela, none of the governors or premiers of the Western Cape region have been black. And if I'm wrong, because some of their pictures weren't online, so I was looking through all of the premiers going back to 1994, and some of their names didn't have a profile picture next to them. So I might be wrong about that. Okay, but so if I'm wrong, correct me on that. But from the pictures of the people who were there, none of them were black. And this is a overwhelmingly black country, a proud black nation. Okay, so it's not impossible that this brother had an invention that could have made him a multi-millionaire. And given the history of racism in that country, someone killed him. And it like I said, it's just very strange that this white industrial engineer came out with the same invention after this brother's death. We all know that this has happened in America too. We know that a slave named Nearest Green taught Jack Daniels how to make whiskey and was never given credit for it until recently. We know that Henry Ford gets credit for the assembly line, and there's belief that he got the idea for the assembly line from George Washington Carver, a black man. And that's just one of many examples. Like, we know for a fact in the United States, at least, all throughout the history of slavery and even after slavery, you have black inventors who weren't able to patent their inventions because of racism. Because they didn't want black people profiting off of great inventions. And even to this day, there are inventions that black people have been behind that people don't even know about. People don't even know some of the things that black people have invented. You guys think about movies like Hidden Figures. Now, black people didn't invent NASA or anything. I'm not saying that. But a lot of people didn't know before the Hidden Figures movie the role that black women played in the space race in the 1960s. Black people have played an incredible role in the United States. This is every much our culture as it is everybody else's culture. Black Americans have had a massive impact on American life, American culture, and American history. So much so that this country would not be what it is today without black Americans, without black people. And we do not get the credit that we deserve for our role in this country's history. Which is why months like Black History Month are very important. And it's why Black History Month is needed. Because people need to be reminded of the role that we have played in this nation's history and the attempt by people to whitewash this history and appropriate this history and put claim on this history that is not theirs. They don't just do this with ancient Egypt. I wrote this is like an off-topic thing that I'm bringing up right now, but I'm not talking about this on the stream. But if you go to my blog, blackandintellectual.com, you will see a couple articles. One article in particular that I wrote over the weekend about one of these articles being about how the first Britons, the first migrants into Britain were black. And this has been proven using DNA evidence. This has been known for years. You can go back to Dr. Ivan van Sertima's book, the African Presence in Early Europe. This has been known at least since the 80s. Honestly, before that. So, whitewashing black inventions, taking credit for black inventions, taking credit for first that black people have been involved in our impact on societies in general, that's a very old thing. That's a very old tactic. And it's a necessary tactic for white supremacy. And people have to understand that. So, is it outside the realm of possibility that these South Africans who are outraged about Nkomo's death, that they are accurate in that his invention was stolen? No, that's definitely possible. We don't know what happened, and I will say that. It has not been proven conclusively. And it might not ever be proven conclusively. Because if he was murdered because of his invention, then trust and believe, the murderers have the media in their pockets. My brothers and sisters in South Africa. The murderers have the media in their pockets. The murderers have the politicians in their pockets. All right, so I want to read to you guys. First, let me retweet this. Let me retweet this post. Give me 1 second. I can see some people are joining me right now. It's so good for everybody to, I'm so glad that everybody is listening to this. And, like this and retweet it. Share it everywhere that you can. And so, yeah, let me read some of the reactions on Twitter from some people. Okay, so one man says, when it's literally the same idea but different skin color. And he has a picture of the invention with a picture of Nkomo and a picture of the white man who has been given credit for the same invention. Another woman by the name of Samu, I might be mispronouncing her name. She says, justice for Nkomo. He invented this and then he fell off of a 50-story building. And then she says he wouldn't allow it to rain there. This is injustice. Or this, well, hold on. Nkosinathi won't allow it to rain there till there is justice. Okay? Another man, Post Malume. Okay? Nkomo comes up with an affordable gray water system that reuses bath water to flush the toilet, then dies unexpectedly. 3 months later, Retief Krigi, or Craig, however you pronounce his name, comes up with the same solution. Okay, so there are a lot of people who believe he was killed for this invention. And I'm not the type of person to if people have a theory about something that I believe is based in history, it has a historical foundation, I'm at least willing to give people the ability to air their anger. So a lot of people wouldn't have the same take on this story that I do. But I think they have the right to feel this way. And I can definitely understand where they're coming from. So I hope that people get to the bottom of his death. I don't believe he committed suicide. I do believe he was murdered. And if he was murdered, then you have to look at the possibility that he was murdered because of his invention. Okay, that's of course he could have been murdered for other things, yes. But when you look at history, there are only but so many so many conclusions you can possibly come to. So that is that story. That is the story of Nkosinathi Nkomo. So definitely look up his story online if you want to know more. Now let's move on to today's Black History Month profile of Angela Davis. Now, in preparation for this live stream, Angela Davis, it's like the same thing with W.E.B. Du Bois. There's so much to her history, just like with Du Bois. There's so much to his history that there's no possible way you can go over everything that she stands for. There's no possible way that you can go over every facet of her positions on every issue and every topic. Because there's just hours and hours and hours of content online specifically about Angela Davis. So I'm going to briefly touch on her positions, her primary positions, and her primary things that she's been fighting for since the 60s. And there are a couple of videos. Both videos are, the videos themselves are over an hour long, but I'm not going to play the whole video. I'm going to play snippets from both videos. The snippets are only going to be like 2.5 minutes long each. Just to give an idea of some of the things that she was advocating for. An incredible woman. Like words can't really describe the amount of respect I have for Angela Davis. I first heard of Angela Davis years ago. It was probably around the time when I saw the movie Black Panther, not the Black Panther. I was thinking, because people, when you say Black Panther today, people are thinking about Marvel. I'm talking about the old Black Panther movie from the 90s. I think it was called like Panther, if I'm not mistaken. And you know, my parents introduced me to the Black Panther Party at an early age. And but I didn't really start like heavily researching her until my college years. Like that's really when my philosophical and very radical beliefs, my sort of like late high school, I'd say like maybe like around when I was a senior in high school and into college. That's really when my radical philosophy started taking shape, and when I started doing research on a lot of these figures like King and Malcolm X. And I mean, not just from the point of view of what the media was saying about these people, but actually reading their speeches, listening to their speeches, watching their speeches, reading their books, and just, you know, research on a whole different level. So Angela Davis advocates for a lot of things. Specifically, she has always been an anti-prison activist, calling for the abolition in many ways of prisons. And she is really the grandmother of the struggle against the prison industrial complex. She's been fighting that struggle for so long before so many other people. Not to say that people weren't doing it before her, but in terms of modern history, in terms of like post civil rights history, you're hard pressed to find somebody who has championed this cause as strongly as she has. But then she has also been a huge voice in the feminist movement. She's been a huge voice when it comes to discussions about class and communism. She was a member of the Communist Party for a long time. Communism, she's spoken on social democracy and democratic socialism. Okay, but she's also spoken on fascism, not because obviously she's not a supporter of it, but she's talked about fascism in ways that even people today don't talk about fascism. Okay. Angela Davis properly equated the prison industry with slavery, which is something a lot of Americans across the political spectrum don't want to believe in. A lot of people do not want to equate the modern prison apparatus with slavery, despite the fact that we know inmates are forced to work for slave wages. The story even came out during that huge wildfire in California recently, that inmates were being used to fight the fires so that the firefighters, those who are paid and trained to do that job, wouldn't be put in harm's way. So, in the late 60s, Angela Davis joined the Black Panther Party and an all black branch of the Communist Party called the Che Lumumba Club. Obviously in reference to Che Guevara and Patrice Lumumba. So let me read this excerpt to you guys from, where's that article at? Okay, so here it is. This is from history.com. Outside of academia, Angela Davis had become a strong supporter of this is after she joined the Black Panther Party. 3 prison inmates of Soledad Prison, known as the Soledad Brothers. They were not related. These 3 men, John W. Clutchett, Fleta Drumgo, and George Lester Jackson, were accused of killing a prison guard after several African American inmates had been killed in a fight by another prison guard. Some thought these prisoners were being used as scapegoats because of the political work within the prison. During Jackson's trial, they're talking about George Lester Jackson. During Jackson's trial in August of 1970, an escape attempt was made and several people in the courtroom were killed. Angela Davis became a target and was brought up on several charges, including murder, for her alleged part in the event. So this was during the Nixon administration. So this was one of those time periods. This is one of those eras when COINTELPRO was in full effect. There were 2 main pieces of evidence used at trial. The guns used were registered to her, and she was reportedly in love with Jackson. I don't know how true that is. That's what History.com is saying. After spending roughly 18 months in jail, Davis was acquitted in June of 1972. I was watching an interview she did. I want to say it was with TV One some years ago. Or Black Enterprise. It was with Black Enterprise. And she was talking about how one of the reasons why she got off is because there was such a groundswell of support for her, both domestically and internationally, from all around the world. People were saying, "Free Angela." And, you know, there are a lot of iconic photos, but you'll oftentimes see the iconic GIF, the GIF, some people use on social media, of Angela Davis walking into the courtroom with that awesome, you know, that huge, awesome, you know, afro that she was rocking at the time. And, you know, she put the Black Power fist into the air as she was walking in very gracefully. And that image has always stuck with me. You know, there are certain images that you never really forget. And it's the reason why I wanted to focus on her today is because, like I said, you don't hear too many stories about leaders, you know, in the 60s, especially the 50s and the 60s, who, you know, made it out of that era unscathed. So many lives were lost. You know, so many people became political prisoners. So many people had to flee the country. So many people were murdered and framed. Okay, so she was able to avoid all of that, but they were trying to make an example out of her. And she stood her ground and she defended herself and she came out on top. That is an awesome story. An incredible story. So I want to read to you, or I I want you to listen to some of her statements on fascism coming to America from a speech that she gave in California in 1972. So let me stop the music right quick. I'm going to go ahead and stop the music and just take a listen to this.
I have used the word fascism. I have talked about an increasingly fascist danger which people in this country must begin to come to grips with. Some people have accused me of using rhetoric which doesn't have any basis in reality. But I think that we have to be very serious during these very critical moments. We have to understand that there is indeed a very real danger, menace of fascism in the United States today. I do not think that we have already entered into a period of full-blown fascism, because fascism is not something that suddenly explodes and erupts into being. If we look back into the history of the world, if we look at countries like Germany, Spain, Italy, we see that fascism is a process. It's something that grows and develops. It's like a cancer. It starts attacking one group of people, but like a cancer, it begins to spread out with a fatal rapidity, and eventually, like a cancer, it destroys everything around it.
All right, so hold on, let me get the music back on. All right, so that was a very I chose that clip for a reason. Okay, because I need people to understand that she was saying this in 1972. 1972, she was talking about the dangers of fascism. And if you really study the trajectory of America since then, she has been proven right. It has been one steady trend towards fascism, to the point where now you have people who are openly antagonistic towards democracy who are in power. You have people taking away rights consistently and unapologetically, and spinning their views as being for our safety, when in reality it is a slow chipping away of the rights of the American citizen. She was incredible. She was so ahead of her time. Or she in many ways, she still is ahead of her time, because she still says this stuff in her own way. And a lot of other people still don't get it. People still don't get this. You have people in power right now, today in America, who are parallel to fascism. You see a complete breakdown of the American political system, because of for a lot of different reasons. Okay, but this breakdown in the American political system is an outcrop of the excesses of that system. So when you have a system that becomes so oppressive and gets used to becoming oppressive, Just like she said, eventually it's going to start affecting everybody. So you can say that black people were the first victims of American fascism. Black people effectively lived under a fascist regime known as Jim Crow, a fascist apartheidist regime known as Jim Crow. But look at where things are headed now. This is now including everybody. White people are now, your numbers being called up. And you still have a lot of people who want to cape for this system. So, if anybody wants to listen to that whole speech, it's you can find it on YouTube. It's just a speech she gave in 1972 at California State University at Fullerton. Okay, she spoke on fascism, inequality, and racism in America. Okay, so let me stop the music once again, and I have another video that I want to play for you guys from another speech that she gave. 1208. This was a more recent speech. This was a speech that she gave in 2003. You know, I love listening to people who have seen more things than I love listening to people who have been there. Like people who have been there and they've done that. You know, one of the issues that I have a lot of times with a lot of people today is that I think a lot of people, and I might be guilty of this myself, a lot of people speak on things that they haven't necessarily experienced. And I think one of the problems that we have in the African American community is a lot of people have kind of forgotten what a lot of people like the Angela Davises and people like her, what a lot of people went through for you to be able to do a lot of the things that you do today. You know, there's this, and not just black people, even a lot of other ethnic groups that have benefited from the civil rights era. A lot of people just aren't given credit, and a lot of people just take way too many things for granted. But let me get off my soapbox and play this clip for you guys.
Imprisonment and slavery have been two lifelong obsessions of my own activism and research. And so this evening, in honor of Dr. Eric Williams, I want to try to urge you to think about the historical system of slavery and the prison, the institution of the prison together. And specifically, I want us to think about the extent to which the vast global apparatus of imprisonment, and particularly corporate involvement in the business of punishment, that these developments are related to what I would call the sedimented history of slavery we are living out today. In other words, slavery has not yet been completely abolished. And I think it is important for us to learn how to talk about this institution as it affects our lives today. Later, I'll probably make reference to Du Bois's notion of the abolition democracy. That is to say, that the complete abolition of slavery would have required the institution of economic, political, social democracy. And here we are at the beginning of the 21st century, and we cannot yet say that racial democracy, economic democracy, has been extended to people throughout this country, throughout the hemisphere, and throughout the world.
So did you guys hear that? I'm gonna replay. I'm not gonna replay the whole thing, but I want you guys to listen to this thing that she just said. People completely miss this historical point. Du Bois, she mentions the Du Bois when she says in this little clip that I just played, but Du Bois wrote an essay. I don't have the year right in front of me, but you guys know Du Bois was the first Black history profile that I did. I've read a ton of his stuff, but I don't have like all of the dates that he wrote this and that in my head like that. I would have to look it up. But he wrote an essay, okay, probably sometime in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, called The Propaganda of History, where the whole point of the essay was to explain how history is propagandized and it's conveniently used to tell certain narratives that people within the dominant society want to tell, where they leave out the stuff that they don't want to talk about and they include the stuff that they do want to talk about, and they will even whitewash this stuff. They did this with slavery during Du Bois's era, where they tried to they whitewashed the hell out of slavery. Okay, so that was sort of the gist behind the essay that he wrote called The Propaganda of History. And when she said this, I thought about that. I thought about, the same thing that Du Bois was writing about. So let me go ahead and play this part again so it can sink in.
To Du Bois's notion of the abolition democracy, that is to say that the complete abolition of slavery would have required the institution of economic, political, social democracy.
The complete abolition of slavery. The complete abolition of slavery would have required economic, political, and social democracy. And obviously, if you know history, which most people know this about history, most people know that did not happen. There was a little bit of political democracy, briefly, during the Reconstruction era, where you had slaves, who made their way into Congress. But this was shut down quick. This was stifled quick because of Jim Crow laws. And so we know that there was very little to no political democracy. There was no economic democracy. So was slavery really ended? Like, did we really properly as a nation correct the wrongs of that treacherous system? The answer obviously is no. And as a matter of fact, new forms of slavery were invented along the way afterwards. And this society has continued to invent new forms of slavery since then. Some of them still even existing to this day, like the prison industrial complex, which Angela Davis has excellently talked about for her entire political activist career. So those are some of the things that I wanted to speak on specifically. There's an article, not an article, but there's an interview that she did with Ebony.com. Okay, back in 2016. Okay, where one of the questions, so this was after Ferguson. One of the questions Ebony.com asked Angela Davis was, as you note in your book, events in Ferguson after the police shooting of Michael Brown exposed the militarization of police forces. Where is this push towards militarization headed, and how can it be stopped? And Angela Davis replied, if one looks at the history of policing, especially over the last 15 years, in the aftermath of 9/11, one can see the emphasis on the shifting of resources from the military to the police. Then she goes on to say this actually has a much longer history if one looks at the way in which the Vietnam War resulted in an impact on local police. She says the SWAT squads emerged as a result of using techniques and technology that were used by the Green Berets in the Vietnam War. The Los Angeles Police Department was the first to use such tactics against the Black Panther Party. We have also seen the emergence of privatized policing corporations. In the book, I refer to G4S, Group for Security. That's the G4S is the abbreviation of that name, which is a private security corporation that has spread policing in prisons all over the world. It's important not only to look at the ways in which these moments of inflicting terror have been taken up by police departments, but it's also essential to look at the economic dimensions by such processes. G4S, of course, is the third largest corporation in the world, and it is the largest employer on the continent of Africa. It is connected historically with the privatizations of prisons in the United States and other places. So, you want to know why the drug war continues to be waged and why you have the current administration that doubles down on the drug war. You want to know why even during the Obama administration, they were silent for the most part on this issue. Okay, it's because of money. It's because of money, it's because of corruption, and it's because of racism. If you think for a second that white people in America or around the world are the primary victims of this system, then you need to do a lot more research. The primary victims of this system are Black and brown people and maybe Asians in the Asian world. I'm gonna stop right there. I was about to say something, but I'm not gonna say what I was thinking about saying. Just read up on Angela Davis. What I might do, since she has such a lengthy history, on Wednesday I might focus on her feminist history and her work in the realm of communism and the realm of socialism. I might focus on that stuff Wednesday because I couldn't get to it today, and I don't want this stream to go on for too long. But definitely, Angela Davis, definitely read up on her if you haven't already. She is a lion of the struggle for Black people, for equality, for analyzing race and class. So she's great when it comes to the class struggle of Black and brown people. Just an incredible person. And she will go down in history, rightfully so, for being the leader and the champion in our community as she has been. So definitely God bless her and anybody who has been in the struggle with her. And so that's all. I just remembered I didn't put the music back on, but that's not important. The stream is over now. The stream is about over. So definitely check me out on Wednesday, 12 p.m. I will be back, and we're going to be talking about, I don't know what profile I'm going to touch on Wednesday. Outside of Angela Davis, I don't know who I'm going to touch on. Maybe Ida B. Wells or someone else. I'm not sure yet. I have to decide. I have a list of about three other names, and I'm going to decide which one I'm going to speak on. But go to my blog, www.blackandintellectual.com. If you have any stories that you want me to touch on, send me a notification. Just at me or something like that on Twitter, and I'll touch on those stories. But yeah, that's it. That's this stream. I want to say this is what, episode 7, 8, and another one is in the books. So like the video, share it, and I will see you guys on Wednesday.